Hi, welcome back to Cambridge Inside Out. I'm Judy Nathans.
And I'm Robert Winters. And
okay, Rob, we
and
got
it's
a lot on your plate here. We got to talk
definitely
about.
got a lot on our plate.
Yeah, mostly you, but that's good.
Right. Now, one thing I thought, since we just, in the previous half hour, we talked about a lot about the Cambridge municipal elections, and there's more to say because of the ballot question. We'll get back to that in a second. But I think the last time we did a show, it was before the
primaries. That's right.
Preliminary elections. Actually, the term preliminary, primary, general election. Yeah, I always try and get these right. But
Well, Somerville and Boston had primaries.
Right. So the system in many cities and towns, which have directly elected mayors, and we are not one of them, where what they do is they whittle the field down to two candidates. And in a preliminary election, and then the two candidates, as my grandma used to say, irregardless of party, the two go head to head in the November election. Okay, that's kind of how it's done. It's actually how a lot of elections are conducted in the southern states as well, I might add. It's sort of funny that way. So anyway, so right as our immediate neighbors were Somerville and Boston. Right. And in our previous program, I think, or at least in previous programs, we talked a little bit about, we're doing a little guessing, like, what do you think is going to happen? And my suggestion, I didn't really know what was going to happen in Somerville. I mean, I thought everybody's hope and prayer was, please let it not be Billy Toro. And thankfully, it was not Billy Toro.
No.
He finished dead last. So basically, it's going to come down to a question. And in this regard, it's probably similar to Boston in a way, in that you have a person who is an identifiable town. Well, there's different ways to cut the pie here, right?
Sure.
But somebody who's a clear townie, born and raised, lifer in Somerville.
What's her name? Catherine or
Katiana, right? Valentine, right? And Will Mba, who I actually first met. I think he's actually was a custodian or somebody at MIT when he was first running. Yeah, so he was just a working guy.
He's from Cameroon, or his family.
Yeah, originally from Cameroon. So, but there's a guy who
he basically came in. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, he's an elected councilor in Somerville. Very much identifiably associated.
And so is she, isn't?
Yes, but he was very much, I would say, at least for what I know, I tend to associate him with the Arab Revolution group.
Okay, and not
maybe the other one is blessed by them as well.
Yeah, although I mean, I did watch one debate, the one debate they had. I did watch it, and she was more impressive to me than the other female candidate.
Yeah. So I think that there's so the townie vote did not go for Billy Toro.
No.
But there is still a lot of people who live their whole lives in Somerville who are very likely to come out and vote. They may favor the person who is another raised candidate.
Yeah. So which is what now you're going to Boston and you're gonna.
Right. So in Boston, there's a similarity, at least, and it's certainly different. But I think the big story that's been written about all over the Boston Globe, and I think it's a bit unfair, but it's also unfortunately true.
It's also nationally. It has been covered nationally. Too.
Yeah, but so there were 5 candidates for Boston, 3 identifiably Black candidates, and the vote was split. Yeah. And so for the 5 candidates, of whom 2 were to proceed to the November election, none of the Black candidates proceeded to the November election. Right. So the 2 candidates,
including the acting mayor.
That's right. Right. So Michelle Wu, who is sort of I think could fairly be said is the darling of the left, right? The progressives, I always like to say whatever that means.
And the techies, whatever, all the people,
Yeah, and then there's Anissa Sabi George, right?
Who was born here, right?
Yes, so she's town, and so you may very well see the kind of already they were sort of either trying to, smear each other a little bit or run from what they've said in the past.
I heard that night that her whole Anissa's like the mayor. I'm going to be a mayor, a strong mayor, you know, and the
she
whole
was-
Boston, she really played that up, right?
She was really playing it up.
Yeah.
I was actually charmed by that, I have to say.
Yeah.
'Cause I was like, all right.
Yeah.
But I think they're both quality candidates.
And the police like her.
Issue, which
Yes,
unfortunately gets
I know.
oversimplified
It's
to
too bad. Yeah.
do you
Right.
support the police or do you
You
defund
want
the
to just
police,
get rid
right?
of them. Yeah.
As
yeah.
opposed to, can we just do it better?
Can we just reform and do things like,
I think that's what most voters just want.
And a lot of the police people want that too. They don't want to have to respond to these mental health and drug.
I think that's kind of generally true in a lot of states like Massachusetts. You can certainly in Cambridge, I think the police are not willing to claim they're without fault, and they're always embracing the idea of doing things better. But this is the current politics of the past year and a half is, let's face it, there are people in Cambridge who still actually believe you should abolish the police. And I thought, well, that's silly, but that rhetoric is out there still, So I don't think that's really how most voters are going to think of things. But it is definitely part of the vocabulary for the Boston general election come November.
Well, it'll definitely be a woman, but they knew that anyway, because John Barrows was not polling well at all. So.
That's right. And
but it's too bad. I mean, I liked it. I listened to I listened to 2 different debates that were right before the primary one. I did like Andrea Campbell. I thought she was really good.
Yeah, no, I thought she was great.
And I think she's going to go places.
I agree.
I think she was more effective.
Yeah,
in a lot of ways,
but it's terrible that there's all this finger pointing. Well, she should have dropped out in favor of Janie, but the truth is that she was a declared candidate from the previous year.
I know.
And then
she came out before Walsh even was appointed.
Yeah, and then Janie just became sort of the accidental mayor
because she was president of the council. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So
and she gets to retain that, right? She didn't have to give that up. It's my understanding. Her council seat.
No, she's still the city council president. There may be somebody kind of acting in that role.
But she didn't have to give it up to become the acting mayor.
No.
Well, that's a kind of good thing, I guess.
Yeah. So anyway, it's
okay. So that's Boston.
Actually, no. I think she gave it up. Oh. Well, she is it now, but remember this was a municipal election,
right.
So there were new races.
Her seat. You're right.
So
her seat may have been taken.
She did not seek re-election to her council seat.
Okay, so then she did, in a sense.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So
I think you can't have it both ways, right?
Right. So some of these like Campbell, Janie, Asabi George, I don't believe any of them ran for their council seats. So consequently, all but one of them none of them will be councilors next time around. So there is some interest in amongst
wait a minute. Are you saying that none of them that ran can?
This is a municipal election and these are 2-year terms. So
and they weren't, but
if they were running for mayor, they were not running for council.
I thought they were overlapping terms. They all come up every 2 years like ours do?
Yes, municipal.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, oh my goodness. I believe so, unless I've completely fouled up here.
All right, I'm gonna have to look that up because I don't know. All right.
Yeah, no, there are some interesting individual district councilor and at-large councilor races going on in Boston, but I didn't follow them particularly closely.
I didn't think there were that many, so maybe I'm going to look that up because I think it's different. But anyway, let's go on to more local stuff. All right.
All right. So
let's go on to our elections.
Yes, let's say a little bit more about the elections. Actually, one thing I want to say is that it was all settled that we are going to have early voting for.
Yes, I sent in my card because I decided I wanted to do
now. That's not early voting. That's that.
Well, no, it's mail-in voting. You're right. But
here's my card. Right.
Okay.
So the city sent out a postcard to every registered Cambridge voter.
Right.
Basically inviting them to send in the card to apply for
a mail-in ballot or a drop-off ballot
that they could either mail in or if they're wise, they could drop in the drop boxes, of which I believe there'd be about 6 of them around the city.
Well, yeah, it's so easy.
Yeah. So, and I don't know what
it's not Texas after all. Right? Yeah.
That's right. We don't have drive-in voting. What the heck?
It said you can get it by mail up to them by October 27th, which I thought was awfully late.
Right. That's right. But
that'd be crazy to wait.
The word to the wise, if you're going to mail it in, mail it in very early.
Right.
Do not wait until late in the game to do any actual mailing in.
And you
But that's why
can't-
we have the drop
right.
boxes. So I'm sure this will work for just about everybody. But I got my card. So I'm probably not going to send this in
No.
because I think I'm going to vote in person.
Don't you just go next door? Is that where your precinct is?
Yeah, I'm just at City Hall Annex personally. Yeah.
There's so many things to look at. I just want to have it.
Right.
I
So-
don't want to wait. and look
So
through
there are 3 sites: Water Department, Main
Oh, for
Library,
early voting,
and
right?
Valenti Library, I guess East Cambridge. For early voting, but
Right,
that's just during the week before Election Day, basically.
right.
And then there's the no excuse absentee voting, which is what the card is about. And then there's Election Day voting, right?
Right.
So
Okay.
there are plenty of ways to vote. There's a lot of people people are speculating, well, do you think voter turnout is going to go up or down or stay the same, more or less? And honestly, I think everybody's just sort of blowing smoke. Nobody really knows, because it very much depends on who's targeted. And, if individual campaigns or whole organizations decide to spend all their dollars basically just trying to pull people out to vote, we'll see. I have no idea how much effort they're going to do or how effective they're going to be. We'll see. And so that's to come. There was one thing, we've certainly mentioned this in the past, and I think it's definitely worth mentioning again, which is that in addition to the city council race and the school committee race that are on the ballot this year, there are also 3 ballot questions. They're kind of interrelated ballot questions because they're all about charter reform.
Right.
The first one is basically calls for, to me, this is the most problematic one, is the one it calls for giving city council the authority to essentially veto city manager appointments to any of the boards or commissions, right? And that would include regulatory boards, advisory boards, and honestly, it's vaguely written. So I have to raise the question: if there was a task force to look at childhood education formed, does that count as a board or commission, which would therefore be subject to city council appointment approval? Honestly, what makes something a board or a commission, right?
Well, okay, and then, okay.
So and even in that same spirit, there's questions, for example, and I think I know the answer, but I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So, for example, the election commissioners, right? The election commission, there are 4 election commissioners. Each one is appointed, and every year, Republican, Democrat, appointed by the city manager. But he is not free to just appoint anybody. He must choose from a list of 3 that are vetted by the respective party city committees. So, he basically has choose through 1 out of the 3 Democratic nominees, 1 out of the 3 Republican.
Why, is this in the charter or is this per commission?
Okay, so now I'm going to pretend to be a lawyer for a moment and just say that.
Why wasn't this adjudicated before we sent it off to the state? Why didn't our legal department look at it?
Well, I'm not going to crush the law department here, but I think that should have been in the narrative.
There should have been a public hearing or something. There should have been
more
discussion of this.
All of these ballot questions.
Well, the
were
other 2, like
basically
you
pushed
said,
with no process.
Yeah. Well, the other 2, like you said, we could have done it all along. We didn't need a charter to review.
Right. But just 2 problematic examples, which I think I can give an interpretation, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
One was the election commissioners.
Right.
The election commission was established by a special act of the legislature in 1921.
Okay.
It was not established as part of the Plan E charter. So I would probably make the case, but I could be wrong, because after all, it is called a commission and they are appointed by the manager. So, but because it was not part of the charter, you might argue that those appointments are not subject to council approval.
City council review, right.
But,
what
but
about,
there's nothing in the legal opinion, and there was certainly nothing from the Attorney General's office, which completely fell flat in this regard. That addressed this. Honestly, they just perfunctory approval. That's it. Another one is, how about this? The License Commission.
Right, that's the one I was concerned about.
So the Cambridge License Commission is pretty important.
Yeah.
Now, I would argue that they would not be subject to this.
Is that
even though-
also a state?
No, well, I mean, yes, no.
Okay.
Their authority is, there's certain enabling legislation that, maybe even there was a home rule petition once upon a time that
Right.
allowed the License Commission to basically regulate things rather than the city council, like it would be done in some other places,
Mhm.
right? So, but the thing is who was on the License Commission? Well, there's 3 city employees, right? So the executive director of the License Commission is certainly hired by, so you could arguably say appointed by the city manager by
Okay.
virtue of being the executive director. So that's Nicole Marati Ferrer right now.
Right.
She's a member of the License Commission. Is she appointed? Is that subject to city council approval? All right. I don't think so. But again, I'd love to have seen that in the
When you
write-up.
say appointed, in other words, you don't apply for that.
No, well, you apply for the job.
Right. So
Right.
then,
And it's a
what is
paid professional job.
Right. So to me, when you say appointed, it sounds like you don't go through a process.
The city manager hires you.
Well, yeah, then it's a hiring process. It's not, why do you
I
call it
know,
appointed?
but right. But see, these are some of the ambiguities that I
Yeah.
find problematic.
Okay.
The other 2 members of the License Commission are the police commissioner and the fire chief.
Oh,
Now,
wow.
I don't think anybody can make the case that the
Right.
city council should have the right
Right.
to veto the choice of police commissioner
Yeah.
by virtue
okay.
of the fact that the police commissioner serves on the License Commission
But who
or
else
the
is on
fire
the,
chief.
but is there,
That's it. No,
are
it's
there
3.
citizens involved with, that's it? That is the
no, not
License
for that.
Commission.
That's right. So I would
Okay.
argue then
Yeah,
that
they're exempt.
the
Yeah.
way the License Commission is formed is
Yeah,
independent of appointment. You basically hire these 3 people to 3 city jobs.
right.
And by virtue of their job, they automatically become licensed commissioners.
Yes.
So I would argue then that this should not be subject to
Sure.
that, but still,
Right.
that should have been in the narrative. At least to the city
Well,
council, they should have addressed that.
When you say the narrative, now there is going to be if you support this, this is what it would mean. If you don't support this, this is what it would mean, right? Arguments on both
Yes,
sides.
they're right. So there will be pro and con statements. There'll be a
Well,
summary
hopefully
of the
the con
questions.
statements will address some of this. But
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. But the what you've got there is 3 questions. The first one had to do with the boards and commissions one, which
right.
is the one I find most
Vague.
problematic
Very.
because I've listen, as a this because we have
Yeah.
served on a recycling advisory committee. We have to
Yes.
fill out ethics forms and things. We are
Yeah.
in some respects we are unpaid city appointee.
We were, and then
city employees.
But we had to apply to the recycling people, and then they forward. I think they.
Well,
look at
that's just as a formality. You're
I
technically
know, but
applying to the city manager.
I know that, but he goes by recommendations, I think, of the
He then-
department that knows what they want to cover and do,
Right.
right?
But you are technically applied to the manager for
Yes,
appointment,
I know that.
who then will lean on the existing
For
city staff
advice.
and members for
Right.
advice.
He doesn't
'Cause-
just, I mean, he doesn't know
No, he doesn't
that.
do
He
it
doesn't-
willy-nilly.
yeah.
No. And it's not political. I mean, that's the most
I
important
know.
thing. It is
And this
not
will become
political.
political.
This is going to become totally politicized.
Now, they
Yeah.
cite other
If it
cities
passes.
that do it this way, but
There is a
curious
big
whether-
distinction. All right. So let me
Yeah,
say one
yeah.
thing about that. So
yeah, okay.
I believe in every other city where they have a directly elected mayor. So in other words, the
True,
city
that's
council
already
had-
different. That's
Right,
true.
so the city
Yeah.
council had no say-so whatsoever in the choice of who got to be mayor. So the
Right.
mayor then makes appointments, so they say, well, we'd like to have a little say-so in the appointments that the mayor then makes. Because after all, we didn't pick you as the mayor,
Right, where they,
okay? Whereas
right, where they do,
in Cambridge, the
Yes, we have a
city
city manager,
manager is effectively, in terms of the charter and every
yes,
wording in state law, you
Yeah.
can effectively replace the word mayor with city manager.
right.
City manager is not elected. The city council hires the
Yes,
manager.
Right,
And then there is an explicit section in the planning charter that says, you shall not interfere with any hiring decisions or appointment decisions whatsoever for the manager. And it is a felony. It is punishable by jail time,
okay,
a
so wait a minute,
fine, and prohibition from ever serving in that elected
Wait a minute.
office.
but
again.
if that's in the charter, then this ballot question, if it passed, would have to change that.
Well, so
No?
then it becomes a question of definitions, and that's why it should have been addressed in the narrative. Okay,
Oh,
so
gosh,
if
yeah.
I choose to view appointment and serving on a city board as being more or less equivalent to being employed by the city, again, we have to file ethics forms and do all of that stuff. We're just volunteer.
Not if you are on this race and unity commission. That's the
Right.
other
Well,
thing.
there's some other ones.
Wow.
Already there's, the city
Oh.
council is basically trying to, and actually even this, well, let me just say what the three questions are. So the
Okay.
first one is about boards and commissions, which
All
is
right.
extremely problematic.
Yes.
The second one has to do with a mandatory performance review annually of the city manager, which I just consider to be ridiculously superfluous because the city council
that power to
hires
do
the
that.
manager
Right.
and
they can
has
do that.
always had the
That-
authority
to
and
do
the
that
right, and
whenever they
maybe
want.
arguably
Right.
even the responsibility
And they
to
had let that
to
go. Right.
basically evaluate the performance of their manager.
Yeah,
So
it makes
why
it
is
seem like the charter prevented that, which it doesn't.
No,
and
it
yet
didn't.
that's
So
it's just ridiculous.
so
That's yeah.
it is. It's just really fundamentally ridiculous. All right. And then the third question is, I find it relatively benign, though it opens some interesting doors.
Yes.
Which is it basically would say beginning in 2022, and then every 10 years
Review
subsequent,
the charter.
there would
planning
be
form of
mandatory,
government,
the city council would appoint, this is weird,
Right.
the city council would appoint a committee to review the charter and make recommendations, for possible charter change. But who does the appointment of the commission, the committee that would do that? The council, right? Under state law, the appointing authority is the city manager. So already we are blurring the distinction as to, who the appointing authority is.
Didn't they use the Collins Center to even come up with all this? Couldn't they then outsource that to an entity like that does this kind of work?
I suppose, but they still would have to choose a committee. Yeah. And
but it would be more objective. But
in
the point is,
in many other cities and towns in Massachusetts, what you do is you basically, you could even run to be part of the charter committee. You can be elected to the charter review committee. I might argue that would be a good way to do it. But again, I don't necessarily want to just create elections for the sake of elections either. But so I consider this all to be pretty problematic. But it'll be sold as though, don't you know, these are necessary checks and balances, as I'm
There's
sure
a lot
the
of
rhetoric will say.
candidates and incumbents that want to see a mayor instead of a city manager.
Yeah.
Which,
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe
careful
down
what
the
you wish
road.
for, because
Yeah.
it's
So
ridiculous.
anyway, it's interesting. It's all being pitched as though somehow this is a great way to somehow pull back some of the authority from a tyrannical city manager.
Because we don't have municipal broadband. Let's face it, that's the main issue.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Whatever.
But meanwhile, what's up with the city manager search? Haven't heard anything about that.
That's true. That
lately.
committee that was meeting,
Yeah.
they canceled one meeting, and then when
So,
does he actually leave?
I actually have it posted on the website.
I thought it was January.
It's
but
either the end of January. It could be later. That
end of January. Excuse me. Who would be
there is
acting? Because you're talking 3 months here.
Right, but there may also be, the provision may also state something like, if
I
the
think
council is not going to do it, they would have to inform each other as of that date. Otherwise, he would continue until the end
June,
of the
I
fiscal
think.
year or something like that.
Which
I'd have to go look at it. Yeah, but to me, simultaneously trying to replace a manager while making fundamental changes to the city charter is
dealing with COVID
boneheaded.
and dealing with so many
Yes,
things.
yeah. So I honestly, this is one of the primary reasons why I'm voting for so few incumbents.
Well, you should have seen, that was the last question posed to these ABC people, even though, because Patty Nolan's made sure, well, aren't you going to ask about the charter review thing, which really didn't.
Well, she's hanging her hat on that, and honestly,
I know, and they all went along with it, I think. Although Joe McQuirk did say earlier that he liked the Plan E form of government. He did say that earlier, yeah.
I think by every objective standard, Cambridge is doing pretty well and has done very well. And you can't just say, oh, that's because of Harvard and MIT. It isn't, because they were, you know,
Well, it's been well managed, but
well
yeah, there's
managed and,
issues.
you
Yeah.
know, fiscally sound and you know,
Yeah.
it's actually been, you know, 98% great, I think, under the charter. So to me, sure, nothing should be necessarily be forever. So looking at it is certainly a worthwhile endeavor. But honestly, to come up with these particular proposed changes, because some counselors in a couple of Zoom meetings with no public participation decided that this is what they want,
Well, it's the mayor.
you know,
Yeah.
to me, that was absolutely bad procedure.
I
You know,
don't
I
know.
cannot respect any of that. So meanwhile,
Yeah.
there actually are a few things
Yeah.
I think worth mentioning. You know, and I think it might have been on our very last program. I think I was sort of, you know, speaking to the virtues of Christine Elo, why she should be the next police
Oh, yeah.
commissioner.
Mhm.
So within a week, she was appointed acting police
Yeah,
commissioner.
that's
So
great. I would
good
love
choice.
to see her as a commissioner permanently.
Yeah, I mean, there are actually a number of really great people actually within the department. She's
Really?
one of
Yeah.
them, and I was very happy to see that. You know, so that was a good choice. Another one is our city clerk, Anthony
Oh,
Wilson.
yeah, he's leaving.
Yeah, so he's, you know, he's basically going to
And he's
serve
been
one
there
3
3
year
years,
term.
which is, I mean, wow, time flies.
Yeah, but come the end of next May, then he will depart and just go back to
There's a
practicing
lot
law.
of, the city, the council should work. Those are the two positions, city manager and city clerk. And there's that third one with the auditor.
The city auditor, yeah.
That they
yeah.
can actually have input on. Spend your time doing that. I mean, can you imagine if this passes and then they're going to have to deal with all these? Oh,
well, but no,
I think
but
this is going to be challenged. I really do. If that's
here's another thing to consider. I mean, I think a lot of sort of the scuttlebutt, if you talk to people on City Hall, is that quite a few people may actually said, well, maybe I've been thinking about retiring for a while, so I may. So there may be a lot of upheaval in city government.
Yeah.
Top to
No,
bottom.
it makes sense because people have reached a certain age, and yeah.
Yeah, I sort of appreciate the relative stability and institutional memory within some of the city departments.
Yeah.
But you know, but you know, if you're an aggressive kind of revolutionary type of counselor, you're probably going, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, we can just basically just flush the whole thing clean and just stick people in there, you know, who will basically do our bidding. And I'm a little worried about a very destabilized Cambridge city government, you know, if things head in that direction. You know, I don't think I'm being
Robert, I don't know.
worried about it, but you know, it does definitely worry me.
Meanwhile, Robert, the last that we should, did you see the Globe article today about Mass Ave and Naomi Cass?
Yeah, yeah.
It was Shirley Lunt, right? It was her opinion piece. It was on the front page. And that really hit it, and
yeah, I mean,
your comments on your page about
in recent days, I've sort of been trying to highlight
too much.
We all like to sort of speak in rosy terms about how much we love Central Square and the outdoor dining, whatever. But
I don't like walking through.
I think it's
I will never walk through Graffiti Alley. Number one, because the paint smells, but I just
yeah, I know it's I'm not the bloom is off the rose when it comes to Graffiti Alley for me personally. But we can all speak well about how much we love some of the great things that are happening in Central Square. And by the way, it's worth pointing out that Michael Monestein, who has really been one of the driving forces in actually establishing the Business Improvement District, is actually going to be stepping down.
Hopefully he's going to something good. Let's see.
He's a great guy. Honestly, I'll say straight away, I hope that obviously not this year, but 2 years from now, that he's a candidate. I'd vote for him in a heartbeat.
Wow.
Honestly, he's got all the qualities and the empathy and the charisma, that would make he would be a great elected official. So I hope down the road he considers doing that. I think it would be great actually if he's. I don't know if he's interested in that, but it would be just.
Well, I'm sure he's listening to this and saying, "What?" Robert,
maybe he is, maybe he isn't. I don't know. But the truth is that we do have a serious intravenous drug abuse problem in Central Square right now. And it has grown worse.
Yeah, I know. And I really, you know what? I don't know what the answer is. They clearly don't. And we talk about homelessness and needing more place, but no one really is dealing with it because it's so no one wants to really deal with this.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to do.
It is hard.
And it's not, I don't think it's people are being cruel by saying that it has to be addressed. I think it just has to be addressed.
I thought it was illegal to shoot up drugs on the street. Isn't
I
it?
thought it was, but and I have to say, I've lived
Apparently
in
not.
Cambridge for now
Yeah.
43 years.
Yeah, and you've seen it
43 and a half
enough.
years.
Yeah.
I never once saw anybody shooting up. And in the last few weeks, I have seen multiple times now people shooting up in Central Square. One on the steps of the YWCA and the other one right at the end of Graffiti Alley. And, all the police could do was basically say, gather up your goods, gentlemen, and move along.
That's all they can
And-
do? Why can't they
well,
take them somewhere?
I don't really know what the limitations are. And,
Well, this is
people can
where I
argue-
think having a mobile van or something that completely addresses this, I mean, that part of,
the needle
of safety,
exchange,
public safety, I'm totally in support of, if
When the
that
needle-
could be part of it.
when the
you
needle
know?
exchange was first established in Central Square, it was a
Yeah.
mobile operation. Then it
Well-
became a brick and mortar operation over on Green Street.
Okay.
And now it's basically become a magnet, and basically
I
people
think
go
it should
there.
I think it should be a mobile operation.
They pass out the needles. They don't even bother to exchange them most of the time now. They just
Well,
give
then
them
how's
out.
that different than a safe injection site?
Well, I mean, you don't have a nurse or somebody there supervising things.
But on the mobile van, they didn't have a nurse?
Maybe they did. I don't know.
Well, to
But
me,
I think
those
the
things
van
need
was
to be looked
basically
at.
going
Yeah.
around talking to people.
Okay.
Basically, we'll take in your needles, we'll give you out some needles and whatever, and then you're going to do what you're going to do anyway, right? But the thing is they're not passing out the drugs, so the drugs have to be dealt, and there are people dealing the drugs openly all around Central Square, and it's more than just tolerated. It's almost like encouraged. They sit at
Well,
the edge of the
I-
municipal parking lot, and
Something's got to give. Something,
you
I
know,
don't know what, but
I don't know what the
I-
answers are
I
either.
would like other people involved besides the police, or maybe with, because people with guns scare me. But I'm
I think-
sorry. It's,
Listen, I think the police are pretty open to that idea too. They don't
I know
necessarily
they
like
are,
doing
but
this
there's-
enforcement,
I-
but
so
but
that's-
when
So
when
that's the elephant in
somebody's
the room that nobody wants to talk about, frankly, how to
Right,
deal with
that's
this.
true.
So,
and it's
Anyway.
basically we were not as bad as Mass and Cass over in
no,
Boston.
and you know what? According to the mayor there, she said, well, a lot of these people aren't from Boston. Maybe it's true, because everyone's saying people come to
I
where
don't know
their
where they're from.
services.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
and we have
whenever they
service,
do whenever they do enforcement over Boston, they basically take the
people
bus or the
migrate up.
train
I
and
know,
they'll show up
I
in
know.
Central Square. So we do have kind of a shared problem here. But
Okay.
but let's at least acknowledge
Yeah,
it
I know.
and then take steps from
All right.
there.
I think
So-
we should end because we did go over and
Alrighty.
kind of cut this, but
Yeah.
all right. So we'll be back, I guess, in the first Tuesday.
Yeah, we'll
next
be
month.
back soon. Right.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Take care.
anyway, until
everyone.
then, see you later on Cambridge Inside
Bye.
Out.